Hey everyone. In this episode, we talk with VIIM founder and creative director Steph Hilfer to chat about all things agency. This is going to be an interesting episode. We talk about things like running an agency and the major changes that she is seeing, specifically in the digital marketing landscape today, how to serve clients better. We talk through lead generation, the importance of branding yourself, tips for building client relationships, and what authenticity really means. So let's get into it.
We're kind of in a point where, as we had talked about last week, or sorry, last month, at some point when we connected up, we were talking about all of the different sort of challenges that agencies were facing. And then you had brought in some really good feedback. And I just kind of want to drill down on that a little bit. So let's talk about this just to sort of set the context for the audience. Uh, what do you really enjoy the most about being an agency, running your own agency, and sort of what drew you initially to starting it up?
Oh, that's a full question. What really kind of drew me to it was I've had a marketing career all my life, but it was always for one employer. For me, I felt like I would have a rockin' few years, and then I feel like it would start to get stagnant. And what it was not that I wasn't working hard or that my work ethic wasn't there or that they weren't changing things. What I bring to the table, focusing so much on branding, really we solidify and we get really locked and loaded in that first few years.
Yeah.
And I get itchy. I literally say I get itchy for more. And I started thinking about the pattern that in my career that I'd done. I could help so many more people if I was an agency that just focused solely on this instead of
Yeah.
being an employee focusing on a whole department and dabbling in so many different things. It was, I want to focus on this branding element that makes businesses stand apart, that makes me so passionate. It's not about what I just create and make up for you. It's about us integrating together and really getting deep into why you do business and how you do it and why, and letting that be your brand and letting that come through. Even though I had phenomenal employers and phenomenal bosses in the past, I didn't get that integration.
Yeah. It also becomes sort of a living strategy document, right? As your relationships with your clients evolve, the learnings come in, those learnings inform, sort of the next step. Piece of the playbook today is not necessarily relevant, maybe like it was 3 years ago. And so it changes and
Yeah.
evolves. And I think it keeps you fresh and on the cutting edge too, which is what clients really are paying us for, right? As agencies. So they're looking at us as thought leadership and, the ability to execute. What's the biggest change that you've seen in the marketing landscape over the course of your career?
So I started in marketing closer to like 2003 or four. I mean, professionally. So VIM is only 3 years old. So I'd like to answer this question with just the full scope. When I first got into marketing, even young, still learning what all that even meant, the thing I really noticed was how much, polish and perfection and really put together the marketing was.
Yeah.
Um, think about back in 2004 when I got into the workplace. Sure, social media existed. I'm not going to try to act like it didn't, but it wasn't like it is today.
Yeah.
And so you look at these campaigns and the commercials and the magazines, and they're perfect, perfect in every way. The writing's perfect, the lighting's perfect, the colors all are right. I'm not saying it's not that it's about perfection is lost. It's more about real.
Yes.
People are looking at TikTok videos from kids in bad lighting in their basement,
Yep.
and they're selling products or services like none other. And
Yep.
it's because we aren't perfect.
Yep.
We aren't always polished as humans.
Yep.
We are real and we relate to real. So,
Yep.
so to me, not only is that the biggest change from my perspective, it's the most fascinating and fun to work with change.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, right? There's the sense of authenticity that people crave in relationships. And, we took these relationships, putting them in air quotes here for anybody who's listening instead of watching, um, these relationships, and uh, you lost that authenticity somewhere along the way. And, people that are actually bringing it back, uh, it resonates really well because I think we as human beings crave that. We had Seth Godin on not too long ago. He was saying that the genuineness and the authenticity that you communicate and you talk doesn't matter through what channel, but the way that you communicate, it resonates with your audience like nothing else. Of all of these sorts of shifts, then, what do you sort of personally find the most challenging about, kind of where we are today, and, just from an agency perspective? Like what's the big challenge that you're seeing?
I think a lot of times people forget how different we all are. And right now, when you think about real and you think about things that are drawing your attention, it's usually different, but it's usually out there different. I think a lot of my clients and a lot of the people think that different has to be insanely different instead of realizing that the subtle differences, honing in on those subtle differences and uniquenesses that make you up, and then just living and breathing them so authentically and consistently that that is different enough for the right audience to see it as different. That concept of like, I need to literally be
Yep.
the purple cow in a sea of blue, black, and white cows instead of being like, it's this high contrast.
Yep.
And so what I really work and help people do is realize different doesn't have to be from 0 to 100 real quick. It just needs to be staying in your lane so truly, and that will help you attract the right clientele. And then the most amazing thing happens, you repel the wrong clientele. And most businesses are like, I want to be the Amazon of everything. I want all of the people to want my stuff. Well, I'm here to say, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Sorry, Amazon.
Yeah.
I'm going to fight that one.
Yeah.
No, you don't. You truly want to attract that narrow window, and that narrow doesn't need to be little. It's just so fine-tunedly yours that you walk that walk so strongly that the people who aren't down with that, they get repelled. And when we're talking like think lead generation, and when you're talking about conversion ratings,
Right.
how amazing would it be to be like, well, I already repel people that don't want me, so my conversion rate should be pretty high.
That just sort of brings up other part of my question. Marketing tends to always be about trends. You have your evergreen stuff, and then there's always the you get it all the time from clients. I'm sure it's like they email you like, hey, we should be on TikTok, and I'm reading all this stuff about TikTok, and they send you a link about how TikTok's growing by 5,000%. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, what is your what is your take on that? Where something is actually finally the pendulum has swung back to, okay, yeah, it's about time.
It's something that COVID really brought to my attention, and I think we were ready for it anyway. But I think COVID pushed it. But the big pendulum swing to me is bringing back the high touch. We've gone so digital that for a long time, in the beginning of the digital, it was how do we make you feel like this is high touch? How do we automate this
Mhm.
and personalize it by knowing your name and entering that automatically? It wasn't shocking when your first name was the subject line of email. You
Yeah.
had 100 of those,
That's right.
you know? So COVID put to me, when all my clients were saying, what do we do? What do we do? We can't physically see our people anymore.
Yeah.
Um, and for a lot of clients who did that, that wasn't even high touch anymore because that was their normal. So to me, the pendulum swing has been, how do you bring in high touch to your business? And some of the silliest things is go back to postal mail, mail a gift, mail a handwritten card. Let's go back into time go to some of the tried and true things that you haven't been doing. Of course, you got to make sure the lines, of course, some of these, I guess if we're going to say low touch compared to high touch are easier,
Mhm.
but that's why it's going to work and it's going to stand out. Um, so that, that to me is the one I've been speaking a lot about is getting high touch again.
A while back, we did a research piece that we'd commissioned for Ascend2, which is a research firm that works with lots of big tech and SaaS companies, and they run different types of surveys, reports. They break those reports down, and then they turn them into sort of some findings that we then distribute out for free to agencies and small businesses. I really wasn't super surprised by what I was seeing. These were trends that we were already seeing, especially over the last 6 or 8 months. One of the things that sort of stood out to me anyway was that 75% of marketers feel like they're sort of missing opportunities for revenue growth as a result of challenges like lead quality and marketing attribution.
I'm surprised that it's only, I'm
75%.
surprised. Well, yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised it's not way more. Like those 25, let's talk to them.
Yeah.
25% of them not feeling like they left revenue on the table.
Yeah.
And I also feel like if you aren't leaving revenue on the table, um, why aren't we evolving then? I speak a lot to my brands about brand evolution.
Hmm.
A lot of my clients are either brand new businesses, or they're an existing business that, are either at a pivotal point in their business where this is the time to truly brand or they never invested in that. I'm coming in and I'm saying, I want you to start thinking about how you're going to evolve right now, even though we're doing this. And that seems a little backwards.
Mhm.
But I'm like, that's how important it is. Lead generation is the hot thing that everyone wants to throw dollars at because it seems like the easiest way to grow a business. But what people fail to do is to do their branding
Yeah.
and to really know who they are and who is going to be attracted to them. So then you spend $10,000 on a Google ad and you just, once again, throw those darts out there
Yep.
and you don't hit the mark always. And then what the worst thing that happens is then people stop believing in lead gen. They stop believing in Google ads or they stop believing in marketing in general instead of going back to the foundational piece of making sure that's set before you go and start generating leads.
Mhm.
It's like dating.
Mhm.
Like who are you trying to attract? Like everyone? No. The right one.
Right. If we're going to ask somebody to like date, like we're on a dating app or something, the difference between skipping over all of the steps and getting to know somebody, like and asking them to marry you, instead of developing a relationship, getting to know whether or not that person is the right kind of fit for what your needs are and vice versa. And then walking through some trust building that has to happen, right? That leads ultimately to a healthy relationship that is downstream. And all of that takes a little bit of time, and the hard part is justifying that to your CFO, right? Or in some cases to your client's CFO, right? So when you're talking about building a relationship, nobody wants to hear that, right? Nobody
Yep.
wants to hear, oh, these are the steps that I need to take, and this is how long it's going to take, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that I've found really sort of useful in like as an agent, like just sort of thinking about it, my agency past life, one of the things that I would do is I would say, okay, look, um, I would talk about things like my CFO or my client's CFO would talk about things. I would talk about things like, you know, for example, I would talk about things as it relates to how many closed won deals do we get? How much sales, how much pipeline do we continue to create over time? How fast we're closing or were deals closing? Were they closing faster today than they were before in terms of just velocity? Or are they closing at higher win rates than they used to? All of those things I can sort of point back to the marketing efforts that I was doing to be able to show that the results were directly attributable to whatever it was that I was doing. Right. And you can sort of show a before and after picture. And it's shocking to me how often uh, agencies don't do that, right? They talk about things through the lens of, how did my campaigns, like, what were my campaigns doing? Like, how many leads did I create? Maybe MQLs, they go that far, or even meetings booked, but they're not really talking about the things that really matter to the business, right? The business outcomes. And, and it's when you start talking in a language like that, that all of a sudden you sort of get more sort of the credibility, I think that maybe you deserve as an agency, for what you're doing, like what you're bringing to the table. I think it's really valuable for anybody who's listening to understand the difference between brand and branding. How do you articulate that? How do you how do you say
Yeah.
it differently?
So your brand as a company is built of several different things. Now, the ones that everyone thinks of, their logo, colors. Hopefully, most people think about fonts and font consistency.
Mhm.
But the deeper part of your brand is your messaging, your personality. How do you come across? Are you funny? Are you serious? Are you polished? Are you attracting all? What are some of the things you say? Nike, just do it. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. How many times throughout our schooling, high school, or, elementary to high school, through college, through masters, were we pulling up a thesaurus so we don't sound like repetitive?
Yeah.
But your brand helps you, create those things that you now have permission to be repetitive on because of your brand.
Yeah.
Whether it's a campaign that you're using for a full year or what have you. Um, Also, your brand is your core values and your vision. Now, branding is basically living all of that, living that consistently. And when I say living it, like, core values is a perfect example. Throughout so much of my career, I've walked into like conference rooms where the core values were plastered on the wall on a poster, but that's it.
Right.
You never heard of them again,
Yep.
and they weren't lived.
Yep.
They weren't shared with their audience.
Yep.
They weren't peppered in throughout their marketing. Your branding, the difference between a brand and branding is that your brand gets pushed through your marketing.
Mhm.
Like, kind of going back to what you were saying a minute ago about, skipping all of that midsection. If your brand is a part of your brand is, I sell cheeseburgers, let's just say. So you have logo, colors, font, story, why your cheeseburger is the best and everything. But if you just jump and skip to buy my cheeseburger, buy my cheeseburger, buy my cheeseburger,
Right.
you miss this middle section of,
Right.
am I hungry? Like, does your cheeseburger make me salivate?
Right.
Do I eat meats?
Right.
Do I live where you live? There's this whole section that you have to explore and discover. And not only do you have to explore and discover, and that's part of your branding,
Yep.
but also you need to consistently share that message so that your audience can start to pick it up. Speed of sales, they say it takes 7 to 12 impressions before you see a conversion.
Right.
So if you solidify your brand, but then don't work it through your branding and marketing,
Right.
it's just sitting on a poster in your conference room doing nothing.
It's about how our prospects and our customers, and in a lot of cases, our employees, think about us,
Oh yeah.
right? What is it when they hear the brand name, right? What does that
Mhm.
conjure up? And do I understand as a prospect or a customer what your take on the world is? And like,
Mhm.
where do you stand? What are you for? What are you against? Like, those are all things that sort of go into the mix of whether or not I align with that brand. And I think,
Yeah.
we sort of forget that knowing who your customer is, knowing what your ICP is, and being able to sort of know your customer so well that, you know, you really use their words back at them in a lot of ways. You understand what their pain points are, and you're sort of communicating those back, and in a way that they're kind of looking at you like, okay, this person gets me. This or the brand gets me. They understand what I'm dealing with. They understand where I'm at, and
Yeah.
then there's a choice. Like there's a choice that you make. And it's either, yes, I align with that, or no, I don't. The worst thing is I don't know who you are and I don't know which one of those buckets I fall into, right? That's the worst thing.
It's not. If somebody came to me and they were 1,000% authentic, but who they are and what they sold or what they offered, if they're going to have a really hardcore battle and something about their authentic self is going to not serve the audience that is going to be the likely buyer, then we need to talk about that, control the narrative.
That's right.
It doesn't mean we get to the height of that or lie about that.
Yeah.
It's that we need to control that narrative and align with the rest of the audience.
Yeah.
But it's so much about putting out you, but also finding out about them. It's that two-way street.
It is. And is there a fit here, right? It has to resonate. And the messaging that we're putting forth, it has to have that kind of connection. Otherwise, like I said, the worst thing that happens is, you end up with somebody who doesn't know one way or the other. Like they don't know what to think of you. And that's a marketing failure, right? Is if they don't know what to make of you, if they hear your brand name.
That's a branding failure, not a marketing failure.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one thing that gets so mixed up is, marketing is the vehicle to get your brand out there. And that's why I literally just yesterday was saying, not everyone always wants to work with me because not everyone wants to take a step back before a step forward. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I make you step backwards.
Yeah.
Most people come to me and they want lead gen or they want all of these other marketing things because they're ready and want it now.
Yep.
And I'm the grouchy grandma that says, nope, you can't have that yet until you do this.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. I will own it because that's how important it is.
Nobody wakes up in the middle of the night and says, I need marketing automation. Right. And just putting my Sharpspring hat on for a second. Nobody says I need marketing automation for my life. Right. That is not my core pain point. My pain point is I need to solve a specific problem. My problem is typically I'm short on revenue. I'm not going to make my number. I've got sales and marketing alignment problems. Almost 100% of the time, the reason why people are having trouble hitting numbers and getting to the, sort of getting to the goal line, whatever goal line has been set, as long as it's reasonable, like, as long as it's right. I'll put that caveat out there. But as long as it's a reasonable goal line for somebody and they're falling short of it, it's usually because they don't understand who their customer is. Everybody says they do, but they don't really deeply understand who their customer is. And then they don't know how to sort of take a firmographic sort of ICP fit, right? And make sure that their product, fits in with that. And they do a good job of communicating over and over and over again, sort of where you fit into the world, right? And that's typically what I see, so anybody that comes to Sharpspring, or, anybody who, again, in my past life, when I was running an agency, that was kind of my thing, is like, I would talk to clients and they would always have that. And I would say 9 out of 10 times, it wasn't the reason they came to me in the first place that was their core problem. It was something else. And it was usually the thing that, like you said, you have to sort of take a step back and look at. That being said, I would try to always deliver value while I was figuring out the core challenge that everybody needed to do. I would say, okay, look, you've got to drive pipeline and you've got to drive revenue. I get that. Right. So here are the things that we're going to have to lay out, sort of low hanging fruit things, quick win things that need to happen to be able to get us there. But will you, as a client, allow me to be able to focus on the things that really matter? Because that's what's going to propel your growth, right? That's the fuel. Right. And so we get all of these other basic things in place, drive more revenue. Everybody sort of gets what they want, right? And then behind the scenes in parallel, what I'm doing is I'm working on something that allows me to be able to accelerate that growth because we have all of those things, those best practices, those things figured out. Uh, and
Yeah.
that was an easier sell as an agency than, and maybe it's just because I'm a horrible salesperson. I don't know. I would say, look, I know you need time to value. It's going to be quick, right? And at the same time, I need to, I need to communicate to you that there are some core things that are missing that we need to get right, around the ICP and the messaging. And then once we get that running, then all of a sudden, that's when things really take off. And you usually get people to buy in on that. It's a hard sell when you just come in and you have to say, okay, take a step back. I'm not going to give you what you want right out of the gate, especially if it's not the decision maker that's in the room and it's somebody that's been delegated to, like a head of
Yeah.
marketing or something. There's always that challenge.
I would love to, as my agency grows, kind of alongside our branding, discovery, and development, and we're learning and we're getting a lot more strength as a team and trying things. We have several programs in beta right now, and I don't believe in putting out anything on my service listing until I've tested on myself and then done a few beta rounds with clients who know they're in beta.
Yeah.
Uh,
I love that.
and several of them are
Yeah.
direct lead gen. Like,
Yeah.
what can we do? Plug and play while we are
Yeah.
streamlined, path to path with the
Yeah.
stepping back and stepping forward kind of thing.
I find that just doing 3 to 4 basic best practices related things around things like site optimization, lead handoff, those kinds of things, improving just some of those basic things, you can get 40, 50% improvement to closed won deals just from doing those things. And those are actually some of the easier things to do, what I call the quick wins, right? You can come in, you immediately get an improvement there, and you start seeing that improvement, or whoever the stakeholder is on the client side sees that improvement while you're working with them on a strategic level. It gives you a lot more breathing room as an agency to go and grow, and sort of maybe do the right things despite your client in some cases. if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Most clients that I've worked with have never even experienced their point of sale system. Like, they've never emailed themselves. They've never called their main line. Like,
Yeah.
like, to me, that's you sparked just like, what a great idea to just talk about.
Yeah.
I have the luxury that you do not have, and you can't have it. I have the luxury of being outside.
Yeah.
You are too deep in it,
Yes.
sir.
Yes.
So let me be your blind tester, and let me tell you what it is like to experience your business. And that works for retail. That works for services.
A little bit of the best of both worlds, right? The expectation, you're delivering on the expectation, but you're also strategically thinking for the client in a way that they haven't thought of. And that's really where the major value comes from, the outsized value that you're bringing to the table. And it's an easier way to sell it. Which do you think is sort of more important, demonstrating authenticity and consistency, or standing out from your competitors?
I truly believe it's way better to be authentic and consistent than to find something that makes you stand out for a moment. You can't earn loyalty if you are constantly changing. Because why people are loyal is because there's something reliable in you, something they want from you repeatedly.
Yeah.
So that's why authenticity and consistency are so much better, in my opinion, than just busting something out of nowhere.
Yep.
Mach 3, right? All my life growing up, 4-pack of razor blades, $45, locked behind a case. You see their commercials and it's like sparks and sharp and masculine. And you see like teals and bright greens and blacks and silvers, right?
Right.
Very like everything I'm saying, like, is putting you in a vibe, right? Dollar Shave Club, not only is it $2 per blade, 4-pack for $8.
Yep.
They're funny.
Yep.
Their commercials make you laugh.
Yep.
I'm not saying one's right or wrong, but now all of a sudden, and they're still selling $45 blades and they're still selling $8 blades, and they haven't changed. Mach 3 didn't all of a sudden start getting bearded men laughing and bigger bellies on their commercials. No, they've stuck true. They stayed authentic and consistent.
Yep.
Same with Dollar Shave Club.
Yeah.
Dollar Shave Club is probably one of my favorite brands to speak on when it comes to authenticity.
Yeah.
Plus it's funny.
Yeah.
So who doesn't love a funny brand?
It was interesting because not only did it give you the authentic voice, but you could also, it was backed up visually by what you saw behind the scenes. It was all of the people that were packing and doing things behind the scenes that you didn't get typically, like you're not going to get out of a big brand. The same thing is happening in B2B. And where I see it happening the most is actually on LinkedIn, where people are sharing their own voice, their own authenticity, is coming through in a way that we didn't really have as B2B brands before. I used to work with a group called Marketing Sherpa, and Marketing Sherpa was a big conference for all of these different types of big name brands like Salesforce and Oracle and all of these other kinds of companies that were, Fortune 5000s. And their approach then is completely different than their approach today. And what I mean by that is, like, it was very corporate, and it was one company selling to, prospects, as opposed to people at a company, individuals at a brand, right, that were communicating to other individuals, that will, in a B2B environment. And I think that's fundamentally where people have sort of shifted, in my opinion, right? Over the last 5-10 years, like it's become more personalized. It's become more authentic and individual, where you have individual employees at a brand that are some of your biggest advocates. 10 years ago, you didn't have that in IBM, right? You didn't have that in Oracle. You didn't have that in Salesforce, right? You had the CEO who had his own personality, but nobody was allowed to sort of like have the kind of individual perspective and opinion the way that, we have today. And I think that's a fundamental change, right? In the way that we talk about our brand and being authentic, is showing that your personal take as an employee and as an advocate, but then also, as a, it's sort of a peek into behind the scenes of the people that sort of make up the company.
Yeah.
And again, it comes back to, do I align with that as a prospect or as a customer? Do I align with that kind of, the way that's been, the way you're thinking and the way your take, as a company? That could be great, and that could be ages, but it's real.
Well, personal branding is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Like the concept of personal branding, I would look like a fool if I tried to say how long it was around, because it's probably been around forever. It's
Sure.
hasn't been as obvious. And I think the LinkedIn's
And easy.
are making
Yeah.
that more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And example with even within my own team. So I just hired two sales ladies. And we talked about expectations around, your brand, your personal brand, and how they align with them.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, if I'm doing my due diligence, they aren't getting to this point and being hired if they don't align authentically and innately.
Right.
But there's also, we're human nature and we're in a very divisive time. And so maybe, we go outside of those norms, we go outside of those values. And so, having that conversation is huge. And it's also, especially for these big corporate companies, right now it's so hard. People are struggling so badly with hiring, and they're either hiring and losing quickly, or they simply can't hire at all.
Yeah.
And not to get too political, but, a lot of people are like, well, it's because you're not paying enough, or it's this or that. Instead of being like, your branding is not just about attracting clients.
Yeah.
Your branding is also to attract people who are like-minded, who will work with blood, sweat, and tears because they align so strongly, so loyally
Mm-hmm.
to what it is you do, who you do it for, how you do it. Instead, Simon Sinek literally speaks about, working with blood, sweat, and tears, and how much that aligns with what it is you do, how you do it, and why.
Mhm.
And so that personal brand, hiring, corporate, thinking about all of that, I feel like I tangented there a little bit, but all of that really does wrap in. And
It does.
we're in this huge moment where people are struggling with it. And I sound like a broken record, but once again, coming back, stepping back to this foundation of your brand will
Yeah.
help solve that so
Yeah.
authentically, innately, and I don't want to say quickly
Yeah.
because that does take time.
Well, I mean, I can speak to that firsthand. I mean, we are literally talking about that internally here, where it's amazing. Sharpspring has an awesome culture and an awesome personality. And all of the individuals, like I see that. So we use Slack and I can see it in our company Slack channel and I could see it in the one-on-one conversations that I have with people. But we don't necessarily do a great job of having that come through, right? I mean, I think you probably experience it when you talk to somebody from Sharpspring one-on-one, but you don't necessarily see that in LinkedIn, for example. And so that's one of my things for 2022 is to let that come out a little bit in our
Yeah.
marketing and in our, in our stepping forward, into the new year. It's how do we have an opinion and talk about, why we're excited about SharpSpring, why we're excited about what's going on in marketing and what is happening with agencies and sort of bringing that front and center in a way that maybe we haven't done before. We kind of have done it on webinars and things like that, but we haven't really encouraged, I don't think, in a way that I would like to anyway, where like people can have a voice and sort of a take on the world. And that's something that we're going to try to encourage going into this next year. And it's
Yeah.
an easier,
Sharks.
you know?
Yeah. It has it. And that's why it's so important. And that's why it's becoming a struggle for people who don't do that.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, to just throw a huge, applause to every single, I'm not just brown nosing here. Every single person I've ever spoke with from the Sharpspring team has been phenomenal.
That's awesome.
Understanding,
That's awesome.
like genuinely like interested in what it is that they're working on.
Yeah.
And I mean this in the best way. I'm pretty casual. My agency's pretty casual,
Yeah.
but like casual as well.
Yeah.
And to me, is so refreshing.
Yep.
Because I'm usually kind of like, kind of a little panicky.
Yeah.
And then the last thing I want is to get someone stuffing on the other side. It's like
Yeah.
professional turns to stuffy real quick.
Right.
So when I have things, I guess a pro of this world we're living in, a pro of all of this video stuff we do, when I have someone on the other line who's sipping on their tea and helping me out,
Yeah.
I calm down.
Yeah.
I know I'm supported and
No.
it's great. So I can't wait to see what you guys do in 2022.
Yeah.
I'm always here for that in any way I could be.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, it's great to hear too. And obviously that was not just for anybody who's listening, not pre-recorded. Never had that conversation prior to this. But it just, I mean, I'm kind of tearing up a little bit because that's the kind of thing that you really want to hear when you're on the other end, right? Where you're working hard and I see like how hard these folks work every day and I see how much they put into it and I see what they're working on and all the neat stuff that we have coming up planning for 2022 and beyond. And like they put in a ton of time and effort, blood, sweat and tears. And to hear somebody actually say that is, it sort of makes it worth it, which is really cool. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Steph.
Absolutely.
Lots of people are going to listen to this and they're going to say, that's Steph. She sounds really like knowledgeable and she's got a ton of things like that really resonate with what I'm thinking right now or what my business is challenged with right now. How would they get a hold of you?
Yeah. I can obviously list, the places we are. But I want to share something because this was such an amazing moment for me to reflect on my own brand. I had someone come through. My Sharpspring consultation was booked, seamless. Honestly, didn't really quite. I mean, I was able to track where she came from, but it wasn't from the typical sources. Um, and when I showed up on screen to do my initial consultation with her, her immediate response was panic. And I know not everyone is watching, but anyone who's listening, she sat back in her seat and she looked around her room and her whole body language changed and she kind of panicked. And she goes, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Forgive my mess. I didn't know it'd be you on the screen." And I was so taken aback because I like to think of myself as a very humble individual. And I show up to every call. And so for her to think that my agency is at this IBM stage or this, this different place where you're not going to even see me, um, it made me realize I need to go back and I need to reflect on my own brand. I want people to know that I am very immersed in them. I am here. You're going to see me. You're going to talk with me. I'm really active on Instagram. LinkedIn is a place that I am trying. It is very challenging for me to be on LinkedIn because I get lost in the sea of buy my cheeseburger, buy my cheeseburger.
Yes.
That middle that we talked about earlier is
Mhm.
not very easy to find right now.
Mhm.
But Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn is definitely where I am. My website is Get Vim. So if you wanted to get Vim, getvim.com. You can definitely book a free consultation with me personally, and we'll just kind of chat. I like to just really ask questions. If you've listened to this, you know enough about me. I don't need to start there. So yeah,
Great.
that's how you get a hold of me.
Steph, as always, I thoroughly enjoy our conversations. We're going to have to do this again sometime.
Thank you. Likewise.